No human had ever been summoned to the private chamber of the alien Queen. In the great capital of the Varelian Empire. This rule was known like gravity. Humans were guests, observers, sometimes tools, but never important enough to walk where only royalty and fate were allowed. That was why the sound of approaching guards made every being in the council hall turn silent. Ethan Hall stood among towering aliens, small and fragile by comparison. His uniform was neat, his posture calm. But his heart began to pound the moment he heard the heavy footsteps. The silver-armored guards stopped in front of him. "Human Ethan Hall," one of them said, voice flat and emotionless. "By direct command of Her Eternal Majesty Queen Zelith, you are summoned to her private chamber." A cold wave passed through the hall. Eyes turned toward Ethan. Some were curious. Some were shocked. Some carried quiet satisfaction. Humans were not meant to stand this close to power. Ethan felt his breath tighten, but he did not resist. "I will come," he said. As he followed the guards, memories rushed through his mind. He had arrived on this world as a diplomat, sent by Earth to represent a weak species in a galaxy ruled by strength. He had learned the customs. He had bowed when required. He had spoken carefully, choosing peace over pride. He had done everything right. Except for one secret. He loved the Queen. Ethan had never spoken her name aloud outside formal meetings. He had never crossed a line. His love lived quietly in his chest, unspoken, unseen at least. He believed it was. Queen Zelith was everything humans were not. Tall, radiant, almost immortal. Her presence alone silenced rooms. Her decisions moved fleets and ended wars. To love her was not just foolish, it was dangerous. But humans did not stop feeling, just because they were afraid. The long corridor toward the private chamber seemed endless. Crystal walls reflected soft starlight. Every step echoed like a countdown. Ethan's thoughts grew heavier with each breath. Why had she summoned him? Varelians were known for their sharp senses. They could feel emotional shifts, detect lies, sense hidden intentions. A human heart was loud compared to theirs. Maybe she had sensed it. Maybe someone had spoken. Or maybe this was judgment. The private chamber doors stood taller than any structure Ethan had ever seen. Symbols of ancient power glowed across their surface. The guards stopped. "Enter," one said. The doors opened without a sound. Ethan stepped inside. The chamber was vast but quiet. No guards, no council members. Just one figure standing near a wide window that looked out into endless stars. Queen Zelith did not turn immediately. Her back was straight. Her presence filled the room, even in silence. Ethan felt small, not just in size, but in meaning. He stood still, hands at his sides, waiting. "You are calm," the Queen said at last, her voice smooth and deep. "Most humans tremble here." Ethan swallowed. "I am afraid, Your Majesty. But humans have learned to stand even when fear is loud." She turned slowly. Her eyes met his, glowing softly like distant suns. There was no anger in them. No warmth either. Only curiosity and something deeper. "You have been honest since your arrival," she said. "You have hidden nothing. Except one thing." Ethan's heart stopped. "The guards felt it," she continued. "The court whispered it. And now I sense it clearly." She stepped closer. "A feeling you believed could remain unseen." Ethan's breath shook. This was the moment. The end or the beginning, he did not know which. "Speak, human," Queen Zelith said. "Before I name it myself." Ethan lifted his head. For the first time since leaving Earth, he did not think like a diplomat. He thought like a human. And that made all the difference. Ethan had always known that his feelings were dangerous. Loving Queen Zelith was like standing in the middle of a storm and hoping it would not notice you. Every day, he watched her from a distance, careful not to show the slightest hint of his emotions. He admired her silently, the way she moved with power, Yet her decisions sometimes carried gentleness that even humans could understand. He noticed the way her eyes softened when discussing peace among the stars. The way her hands hovered protectively over the galaxy's maps as if the universe itself were fragile under her gaze. Humans were small and weak compared to the Varelians. They were not made for battle, nor for ruling vast empires spanning countless worlds. Every muscle in Ethan's body reminded him that he could break in an instant, that one wrong move could end him. And yet, his heart defied all logic. It raced whenever Zelith entered a room. It ached when she spoke to others with kindness he could never hope to receive. It was a secret he protected more fiercely than any treaty he had signed. But the Varelians were not blind. Ethan knew this now. They had senses sharper than any human's imagination, capable of reading emotions, detecting lies, feeling unspoken truths. Rumors had begun to ripple quietly through the court, whispers that the human diplomat's eyes lingered too long on the Queen, that his heartbeat shifted in her presence, that his silence was louder than any proclamation. Ethan had tried to dismiss them, but deep down, he had always known that nothing stayed hidden here for long. He remembered one night, weeks ago, standing in the balcony of the royal palace, watching Zelith command a fleet of ships as they prepared to defend a distant colony. The stars reflected in her silver armor, and her hair floated like liquid light in the zero-gravity wind. She was magnificent, terrifying, untouchable. And he had felt something that went beyond admiration. He had felt a desire to protect her, to be near her, to defy the laws of the universe just to keep a fraction of her attention. That night, he had whispered her name softly, though he knew the walls carried sound in ways humans could not imagine. He had never admitted it aloud, not even to himself, but now, in the silence of the private chamber, he realized that secrecy was impossible. Queen Zelith did not need to hear a whisper to know the truth. She could sense the pulse of his heart, the rhythm of his courage, the trembling edges of his devotion. The thought made him shiver, but also oddly calm. If she already knew, there was no way to retreat. No hiding, no deflection, no pretending. Everything had led to this moment. The chamber's air felt heavier, charged with anticipation. Every detail, the glint of starlight against the crystalline floor, the soft hum of alien energy in the walls, the faint scent of ozone and something sweet reminded Ethan that he was far from Earth, far from safety, and yet closer to something he had never dared dream: connection. He understood that this was not just about fear or punishment. It was about truth. The Queen had summoned him because she wanted to see the heart behind the human mask. And if the Varelians valued truth as much as they claimed, she would not allow pretense to survive in her presence. Ethan's mind raced. What would she say? Would she punish him? Laugh at him? Cast him out as weak? A human fool daring to love a being who could crush him with a single thought? He could feel the weight of every possibility pressing down on him. But underneath the fear, a spark of courage flickered. Humans had survived worse than this. They had loved when love was forbidden, fought when defeat seemed certain, and endured when everything seemed lost. And this spark reminded him why he had risked everything in the first place. As he took a step closer to the Queen, he remembered the one rule he had never broken: honesty. He had learned that humans could endure fear, but not lies. If he were to speak now, he had to speak the truth, even if it meant his heart might shatter in the process. Even if it meant the Empire would turn against him. The moment stretched, eternal and fragile, like glass about to break. Ethan's chest tightened with a mixture of dread and hope. Somewhere deep inside, he realized this was not just a test, it was a choice. And he had to decide right here whether he would remain a silent admirer, hidden behind duty and diplomacy, or step into the light of his own heart and face the most powerful being in the galaxy with nothing but truth. He took a slow, steadying breath, feeling every pulse of life in his fragile human body. He had no armor but courage. No weapon but honesty. And for the first time, he knew that even though this moment could destroy him, it could also change everything. Because love, he realized, was dangerous, but so was fear. And he was ready to meet the Queen not as a diplomat, not as a guest, but as a human who dared to feel. Ethan stood frozen, feeling the weight of the Queen's gaze pressing into him. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of energy coursing through the chamber. Queen Zelith moved with a calm precision, her tall frame outlined by the glow of the starlight streaming through the crystalline window. For a moment, she said nothing, and Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as if it wanted to escape entirely. Finally, she spoke, her voice smooth and commanding, yet softer than he expected. "You know why you are here, human?" Ethan swallowed, the dryness in his throat making it hard to speak. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. His palms itched with the need to clasp them together, but he forced them to his sides. "Then speak your truth," she said, turning her piercing eyes toward him. Her gaze was not angry, but it carried the weight of centuries of wisdom. "Do not hide behind your duties, your obedience, or your fear. Say it plainly. Say what you feel." The words caught in Ethan's throat. He had rehearsed this moment 100 times in his mind, imagining every possible reaction she might have, every way he could fail. But the reality of standing here, in front of the most powerful being he had ever known, made every plan evaporate. His secret, the one he had buried deep inside his heart, now demanded to be spoken. I love you," Ethan said, his voice trembling just slightly. It was a simple phrase, only 3 words, but it carried everything he had ever felt. Every longing glance, every moment of fear and hope, every silent prayer he had whispered in the dark of his quarters. Saying it aloud made the truth undeniable. Silence fell like a heavy cloak. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat, fast and loud, echoing in the room. The Queen did not flinch. She did not recoil. She did not speak. She simply studied him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Ethan feared he had made the gravest mistake of his life. "You understand the consequences of speaking such words?" she asked finally, her tone calm but sharp, like a blade poised over his chest. "Do you know what such love could cost? What it could destroy?" Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, Your Majesty, I know." "And yet," she continued, stepping closer, the soft hum of her presence filling the chamber, "you chose to speak them anyway." Her voice softened almost imperceptibly, a sound so rare that it made Ethan's breath catch. "You dared to show your heart, knowing the danger. Why?" Ethan felt warmth flood his chest. He had not expected her to ask. His hands clenched briefly at his sides, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. "Humans, we do not always choose our hearts," he said. "We feel, we endure, we act even when it is dangerous. Even when it is impossible. I cannot hide what I feel, and I cannot unlove you. Not even if my life depended on it." The Queen was silent again, her eyes reflecting starlight, her presence commanding and overwhelming. Ethan thought he saw a flicker of something, curiosity, maybe, or the shadow of surprise, but she gave nothing else away. "You speak boldly for a fragile species," she said finally. "Yet, there is truth in what you say humans are. Unafraid of their emotions. They carry them like weapons or shields, without knowing how powerful they truly are. Perhaps that is why you survived here as long as you have." Ethan's chest tightened at her words. Praise from Queen Zelith was rarer than sunlight on the far side of her empire. To hear her acknowledge his courage was more than he had dared hope. "But understand this," she said, her tone returning to its usual weight. "The world I rule is not like yours. Love is not a shield here. It is a risk. It can topple empires, spark wars, and shatter alliances. To love a queen, it could cost everything you hold dear. Do you accept that?" Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He could feel the truth in them, the danger, the impossibility. Yet, deep in his chest, another truth blazed brighter than fear. "Yes," he said quietly, but firmly, "I accept it. I accept everything, if it means I can be honest with you." Queen Zelith studied him for a long moment, her silence almost unbearable. Then she stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking, and for the first time, Ethan felt the full presence of her power, not as a ruler, but as a being who could sense the depths of a human heart. "You have spoken your truth," she said softly, "and that alone is something remarkable." Ethan's heart leapt at her words, though he dared not hope too far. He had no idea what would come next, whether this admission would be his doom or the start of something unimaginable. All he knew was that, for the first time, he had stepped beyond fear, beyond duty, beyond survival. He had spoken from his heart. And in this chamber, under the gaze of the Queen, honesty was the first act of courage he had ever truly known. Queen Zelith turned away from the window, her glowing silver skin catching the soft light of distant stars. Ethan stood still, his chest tight with anticipation. The moment he had long feared and longed for had arrived. The Queen knew his heart. And now she spoke of consequences that chilled him deeper than any alien weapon could. "My people," she began, her voice low and steady, "would call this weakness." She gestured vaguely toward the empty room, as if the walls themselves could hear her words. "A ruler touched by emotion, by attachment. It is dangerous. It opens the door to mistakes, to rebellion, to chaos." Ethan's throat tightened. He had imagined her reaction countless times: anger, dismissal, perhaps even indifference, but not this. The weight of her words pressed on him, the heavy burden of duty and tradition making him feel smaller than ever. He had known that his love was forbidden, yet hearing the truth of her position made it feel real, imminent, like a storm threatening to swallow him whole. "I understand," he said quietly. His voice trembled, but he forced himself to stand tall. "I understand the risk. I understand that what I feel could threaten everything: your empire, your rule, your people." The Queen's eyes flicked toward him, glowing with the calm fire of centuries. "And yet, you feel it anyway," she said, almost as a statement to herself. "You risk everything, human, knowing the cost." "Yes," Ethan whispered, "because humans cannot choose their hearts. We cannot stop loving, even when it is impossible, even when it is dangerous. It is who we are." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze piercing through every pretense, every thought, every fear. "If I accept this," she said slowly, her voice heavy, "my advisors will oppose me. My generals will question my judgment. My people, they may even rise against me for the choice of a human." Ethan took a cautious step forward, his human frame small but determined. "Then reject me," he said. "If my presence threatens your empire, if my heart is a danger to your rule, then cast me aside. I would rather be punished than see your reign falter because of me." The Queen turned fully to face him, her luminous eyes locking onto his. "And if I do not?" she asked, her tone almost soft, yet commanding. It carried the weight of all her authority, the burden of millennia of decisions, of empires conquered and alliances forged. "Then punish me," Ethan said quietly, but firmly. "Do not lie to yourself. Do not hide behind tradition. If you feel anything, act on it honestly. That is the only way humans, and perhaps even queens, can survive truthfully." A silence fell between them, stretching long and tense. Ethan felt the gravity of the moment pressing into him. He realized then that love in this chamber was not just forbidden, it was revolutionary. It was a choice that defied centuries of law, centuries of custom, centuries of fear. And yet, standing here, he could not step back. He could not deny what his heart had decided. Queen Zelith's hand hovered near her side, trembling imperceptibly, though Ethan could feel the subtle vibration of her energy in the room. She was thinking, weighing, balancing centuries of responsibility against a fragile human heart that dared to beat openly for her. It was a conflict that no Varelian had ever faced, not a soldier, not a minister, not even her predecessors. "You are bold," she said at last, her voice softer than before, almost a whisper. "For a species so small, you carry your emotions with courage unimaginable. Perhaps it is why you still stand." Ethan felt a flicker of hope, but he held back. Hope was a fragile thing in the Varelian court, and a single misstep could shatter it entirely. Yet, even in the shadow of potential doom, he felt a strange strength rising in him. Humans survived against impossible odds. They loved when love could destroy them. They endured when fear threatened to crush every dream. "And so," the Queen continued, "I am faced with a choice: to follow the dictates of tradition, or to follow the truth that resides in a human heart. To rule with caution, or to see if even a fragile species can teach me something I have never learned before." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The weight of her words sank deep, mixing fear with awe. The impossible was happening. She was considering him, considering love, considering the truth of what he had risked everything to reveal. And in that moment, Ethan realized something powerful. This chamber, this confrontation, was not only a test of his courage. It was a battle of worlds, his fragile humanity against the vast authority of the galaxy's mightiest queen. And somehow, against all reason, he felt he might not lose, because courage, he understood now, was not measured in size, strength, or lifespan. It was measured in truth, and he had chosen truth. The chamber felt impossibly quiet, yet every pulse of energy made Ethan's heart race as if the room itself was alive. Queen Zelith stood before him, her towering figure glowing under the starlight, and for the first time, he saw the weight of her eternity reflected in her gaze. She was not merely a ruler. She was a force of the galaxy, a being who had witnessed centuries of power and conquest. Yet here she was, measuring him, not by his size, not by his species, but by his heart. "Why should I spare you?" she asked, her voice calm yet sharp, like steel brushing against silk. "Your kind is fragile. A single misstep could ruin my empire. Your love, it is dangerous." Ethan met her eyes steadily. His body trembled slightly, but he refused to lower his gaze. "Because humans are weak," he said quietly, "but we endure. We survive when hope dies. We rise when everything is against us. We fight when there seems no reason to fight at all. And we love, even when it can destroy us." The Queen's gaze narrowed slightly, as if she were analyzing every syllable, every heartbeat. "You speak of survival, yet you speak with passion, with recklessness. Why do you risk so much for a feeling?" Ethan swallowed hard, feeling a warmth rising in his chest that both frightened and strengthened him. "Because it is truth," he said. "Love is truth. Humans may be fragile, but our hearts are strong in ways your kind cannot imagine. We do not give it lightly, and once we do, we endure. We endure pain, we endure loss, we endure fear. We endure because it is worth it. And my heart, it is yours. Even if it costs me everything, it is yours." The Queen's expression softened imperceptibly, and Ethan noticed a subtle change in her stance. The aura of unyielding power that had always surrounded her wavered slightly, as if she were seeing something in him that challenged her centuries of rule. For the first time, Ethan realized that humans, despite their fragility, carried a kind of strength that no weapon, no empire, no law could measure. "You speak boldly for a human," she said after a long pause, her voice almost a whisper. "You claim endurance, yet I see only a fragile being standing before me, risking everything for emotion." "Yes," Ethan said, feeling the fire in his chest grow stronger. "Because even fragile things can be strong. Because even the smallest voice can echo across worlds. Because even humans can teach the mighty how to feel." Queen Zalith's eyes lingered on him, glowing with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and accepted. She had faced countless rebellions, witnessed betrayal and loyalty, commanded fleets and worlds, but she had never faced someone who stood before her with nothing but truth. Nothing but the courage of a fragile, human heart. "You claim this strength comes from love," the queen said slowly, "yet such a feeling could be your undoing. How can I trust that your heart will not betray me, betray my empire?" Ethan stepped closer, his voice unwavering. "Because love is not weakness. It is a choice. A human chooses it knowing the risk. A human chooses it knowing it could destroy everything. That is why it is powerful. That is why it is worth it. And I have chosen you, not because it is safe, but because it is real." For the first time, Queen Zalith's face softened entirely. She did not move closer, but the energy in the chamber shifted. And Ethan felt it. A subtle acknowledgement, a silent understanding that humans carried a resilience the Varelians could not calculate. Their strength was not in size or technology, but in endurance, in courage, in the willingness to face impossible odds and still stand with honesty. "You speak of human endurance," she said, almost to herself, "and yet it frightens me, because it is unlike anything I have ever known. Even I, who have seen empires rise and fall, cannot command this kind of strength." Ethan's chest swelled with a mix of fear and hope. He realized then that this moment was not only a confession of love, but also a revelation. Humans had survived eons of danger on their home world. They had persevered through famine, war, and extinction. And here he was, standing as proof that even a single human heart could challenge the greatest of beings. "I am nothing compared to you," he said quietly, "and yet even the smallest human can endure. Even one human heart can make a difference. I cannot change the stars or the laws of your empire, but I can be honest. And that honesty is stronger than fear, stronger than power, stronger than death." Queen Zalith remained silent, but the glow in her eyes seemed to pulse with something deeper. For the first time, Ethan felt that perhaps his fragile heart had not only survived this encounter, but had begun to leave a mark on the eternal being before him. And in that silence, filled with unspoken understanding, Evine realized that humans were dangerous not because of weapons, not because of numbers, not because of power, but because of the strength they carried inside. A strength born of truth, endurance, and love. In that moment, humanity had shown its face to the stars, and even a queen could not look away. The chamber seemed to hold its breath as Queen Zalith studied Ethan, her luminous eyes, usually so commanding and unreadable, softened in a way that made him feel simultaneously exposed and understood. The weight of the galaxy rested on her shoulders, yet here, she was not the queen who ruled countless worlds. She was a being trying to understand the courage of a fragile human heart. "Ethan," she said slowly, her voice carrying both authority and something new, almost vulnerable, "you have risked everything by speaking the truth. You have placed your heart in my hands, knowing it could destroy you." Ethan's chest tightened. Every nerve in his body hummed with tension, but he did not flinch. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said quietly, "because the truth is stronger than fear. Even if it costs me my life, it is worth it to be honest with you." She took a step closer, her tall frame casting a shadow over him, yet the aura surrounding her was not one of threat. It was one of deliberation, a careful weighing of centuries of rule against a single, honest human heart. Ethan could feel the energy in the room shift, a subtle vibration that signaled a choice that would ripple across galaxies. "Why do you persist?" she asked softly, almost as if asking herself. "Why stand here, knowing the danger, knowing the impossibility?" Ethan lifted his head, meeting her glowing eyes without hesitation. "Because humans do not always choose what is safe. We choose what is real. We endure pain and fear because it matters. Loving you, matters. Surviving in truth matters. And even if I fail, I cannot unfeel what my heart knows. The queen's expression softened further, and for the first time, she seemed to see him not as a subject, not as a fragile human, but as something greater. A being who could teach her something she had never learned in centuries. Courage born of vulnerability. I am expected to follow tradition, she murmured, almost to herself. To rule without attachment, to place logic above all else. To love is to risk the empire, to invite chaos. She paused, her glowing hand hovering near her side, as if feeling the invisible weight of countless decisions. Yet here you stand, daring me to choose differently. Ethan felt his heart race. The air was heavy with anticipation, and yet, he could sense something in her, an acknowledgement. A recognition that perhaps truth and emotion were not weaknesses to be feared, but strengths to be understood. I will not punish you, she said finally, her voice firm but calm. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Not because I am merciful, but because your courage, your honesty, it is rare. And perhaps it is time I learned that even the smallest heart can shape the course of the mighty. Ethan's chest swelled with relief and disbelief. He had dared to love, to risk everything, and now, the queen had not only accepted his truth, she had acknowledged it, perhaps even honored it. Her eyes softened as she reached out, her hand glowing faintly as it hovered over his chest. I feel it, she whispered. Your heart. It beats for me, willing to endure everything for truth and loyalty. That is power. That is strength. That is not weakness. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes, but he held them back, afraid to shatter the fragile, precious moment. Then what does this mean? He asked quietly. The queen's hand moved slightly closer, not touching him yet, her voice still calm but filled with an intensity that shook him. It means that I choose to acknowledge you, not as a servant, not as a pawn, but as proof that courage and love, even in the smallest form, can challenge empires. That even a human can teach a queen something new. Ethan felt the weight of her words sink in. He had survived the moment of truth. He had endured judgment, fear, and the impossible scrutiny of a being who had lived centuries. And he had emerged not unscathed, but recognized, honored, and chosen. For the first time, he understood that strength was not measured in power, size, or longevity. It was measured in truth, in courage, and in the willingness to stand for what the heart demanded. Even when the world threatened to destroy you, the queen's gaze lingered on him, steady and unwavering, and Ethan realized that this was not merely acceptance. It was a promise, a beginning. Not a guarantee of safety, not a shield from the galaxy's dangers, but a recognition that he had the power to affect even the eternal. To make the immutable pause and consider the strength of a human heart. And in that quiet chamber, under the glow of starlight and centuries of authority, Ethan Hale, a fragile human, felt something no one in the galaxy could take from him. The knowledge that love, honesty, and courage had met power, and power had chosen to listen. The next morning, the Empire awoke to a quiet shock. Queen Zalith's chambers were always private, her decisions usually sealed until the council announced them with rigid ceremony. Yet whispers spread like wildfire through the crystal corridors. The queen had acknowledged a human, not as a servant, not as a diplomat, but as something far more. Ethan walked beside her for the first time openly, feeling the weight of every gaze, every curiosity, every judgment. Aliens of every kind studied him, their glowing eyes flickering with disbelief, suspicion, and in some cases, awe. The human who had dared to speak his heart to the most powerful being in the galaxy now stood not as a subject, but as a symbol. The queen's voice rang clear across the chambers as she addressed her court. This human, Ethan Hall, has shown courage that surpasses the fear of tradition. He has shown strength that even we, who have ruled empires for centuries, seldom witness. His heart is open, and his honesty is a testament to what it means to endure, to love, and to be true. Gasps rippled through the assembly. To call a human courageous was unusual. To call one a symbol of strength was unprecedented. Yet Queen Zaelith's words carried the weight of authority that no whisper or rumor could counter. She had made her choice, and the Empire had no option but to reckon.